So, does anyone care to touch on this further?
My name is Jerry. I left MAGA and I'm here to spill all the tea. Now, I thought I had a plan on how I was going to make this sequence of videos for this Why I Left MAGA series because there was a whole bunch of things that just added up and kept adding up. And then even after I left, they continued to pile up. And I was really glad that I'd left the MAGA cult. But there's been a lot of talk lately about the National Prayer Breakfast, and it just so happens that the National Prayer Breakfast was started by the cult that I grew up in, the Assembly of God Church. So let me just read you this column from the William Branham Research Center, William Branham Historical Research Center, William-Branham.org. Link will be in the description. So let me go ahead and get into this. I hope that the font is large enough for you. The National Prayer Breakfast is a yearly event held in Washington, D.C. in February, organized by the Fellowship Foundation, otherwise known as the Family. And I'll have to do a video on that later. Superficially, it functions as an open forum for the political, social, and business elite to assemble and pray together. The family, however, is an invisible or clandestine organization recognized for strongly influencing powerful public figures. The breakfast was first organized by Abraham Verade in Seattle and later moved to Washington, D.C., where the group began to influence key players in Washington. In 1944, Abraham Verade founded the International Christian Leadership in Washington, D.C., and served as the executive director until he died in 1965. Baron von Blomberg, who sponsored William Branham's international tours overseas, worked with Verade in the early days of the organization and served as an executive member. Von Blomberg worked as the director for the International Christian Leadership, holding conferences for the group. I'll do a video about von Blomberg, but he was adopted by um, a Nazi aristocrat. But we can get back to that. Let's see. In Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, France, England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, von Blomberg was instrumental in organizing the international Christian leadership in many of those countries. Interestingly, William Branham's Seattle meetings coincide with the migration to Washington. Whether Branham was a member of the group since 1946 or not, he openly admitted that von Blomberg sponsored his tours through those countries in the 1950s. I want to skip the insertion there. You can follow the link and go read it for yourself if you want to. I've got several videos I'm wanting to try to get done and a narrow window of opportunity. In 1953, Verade moved the organization to Washington, where successors Douglas Coe and Richard Halverson assumed leadership roles. Shortly after, the family moved to Washington. Demos Shakarian started holding another annual convention in Washington. The National Prayer Breakfast was held in February and then followed up by a Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship convention and breakfast. The Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship, uh, also known as the International Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship, now is part of the Assembly of God Church. So continuing, William Branham, sponsored by Demos Shakarian and the Full Gospel Businessmen International, in attendance at these meetings. William Branham met with then Vice President Nixon during these meetings, and both Branham and the FGBMI associated together with powerful figures in Washington. The speech by Nixon at the 1954 breakfast would significantly impact Branham's trajectory. Prior to hearing Nixon's speech, William Branham's claim of having seven prophecies in 1933 was one of a world without peace, and Branham claimed that he did not know which ism, communism, fascism, or Nazism, would reign. After the speech, however, Branham significantly changed his 1933 prophecies to include a doomsday scenario that involved communism as the main threat. After meeting Vice President Nixon, several state senators allegedly held private meetings with in William Branham's home. The Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship continued to host the prayer breakfast in Washington, D.C. long after Branham's death and continued to influence key figures in Washington. As late as 1983, Demos Shakarian was a chairman of the committee and invited President Ronald Reagan, to speak at a gospel businessmen's meeting in Detroit. In 2010, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington demanded that President Barack Obama and congressional leaders stop attending the National Prayer Breakfast for being intolerant and secretive, but the Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship Convention and Breakfast, not being as televised, went almost unnoticed. Interestingly, Joseph Matson Mosey, who published an article supportive of Nixon's agenda, the the June 1954 issue of the Herald of Faith ran an article, "Our Christian Propaganda Machine. Shall we use it in 1954?" Now, end of article. Now, just a little fun fact about Joseph Matson Bose. He's the guy that got Jim Jones and William Branham together before Jim Jones splintered off into his own little People's Temple, isolated, separate group, and headed off to South America. Anyway, so that's what I've got for you on that. As far as the family goes, there's an article here that I'll get to later. Paul Kane, Chris Valentin, Bill Johnson, and Clarence Thomas, the family. Yeah, that's Supreme Court Judge Clarence Thomas. It's wild out here, folks. Anyway, I tried to keep this video relatively short because I needed to address the prayer breakfast and just to put those wild comments into context that Trump threw out there and why preachers didn't get up and walk out. That's why they're part of this thing right here. Anyway, uh, until the next video and beyond, take care of yourself, take care of each other, get the rest you need, and try to get plenty of fluids.